What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Sports Picks and our Bowl Pick'em special spectacular we got for you guys. We got the one and only Robert Barnes with us here today. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Good. It's we'll be looking at the top 20 bowl games, the ones that most people will be tuning into and paying attention to, and looking at each of those. So that'll be fun for the preview.
All right, and I got my main guy Cody with me. What's up, man?
How's it going? Doing well.
Oh, shoot, man. Just excited. Ready for these bowl games to kick off. They're going to be kicking off tomorrow. I think the first game starts at 11:30. You got Miami of Ohio and UAB, but we're not going to talk about a lot of those, man. We're going to jump into some of these bigger ones. And the first game we are going to talk about, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl between Cincinnati and Louisville, kind of the Jeff Satterfield Bowl, as he will be the new head coach next season at Cincinnati, leaving Louisville to go take that job. He's not going to coach in the game, but he will be there observing on hand. So this is actually the first Wasabi Fenway Bowl, man. They had the 2021 got canceled because of COVID, and then last year Virginia had to back out of the game because of their own COVID issues. So this is the first one we're going to get. But Robert, how you feeling about this one?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, new sort of Boston-based bowl. You don't get a lot of these Northeastern bowl games. Cincinnati Louisville would probably have been an exciting matchup to start the season. At this point, you have both teams without their head coaches. The Louisville head coach leaving for Cincinnati, because the Cincinnati head coach left for Wisconsin. So that puts a sort of really unknown variable in the game. Louisville's favored by 2, pretty low total at 40. They're basically predicting a 21-19 win for Louisville, a low-scoring game. The public, about 2/3 of the public, is betting on Cincinnati and betting on the under. Understandably so under the circumstances. I don't have any lean in the game because in the opt-out era of college football, combined with coaching transitions happening over bowl games, that puts a really unknown variable on it. These two teams were pretty even throughout the season. Statistically, Cincinnati struggled to run the ball, but was a decent passing team. Their defense was good, as it typically has been. Louisville's defense overachieved expectations, and its offense was a little sporadic, but at times could be very effective. So I see it as a game that should be pretty competitive, and I think all the lines are about right, particularly given cold weather in terms of the total, which I would have looked at for the over, but for the fact that it's going to be a cold weather game.
Yeah, I sort of agree there. With the head coaches being gone, it's just there's too many unknown, too many variables. I think throughout the year that defense in Cincinnati was just a little bit better. Would have been the difference maker here. I think I would have had Cincinnati, but given the fact that of the unknowns and the variables, I'm not on anything here.
Yeah, you got Louisville and Malik Cunningham, the quarterback's going to be out. One of their top running back options, Tyon Evans, is going to be out. One of their top receivers out. So many guys not playing in this game. A cool little tidbit, former New England Patriot Deion Branch will be heading up the helm for Louisville, who'll be welcoming in Jeff Brom from Purdue to be the head coach next season, but he's going to handle that. So I don't have a strong lean here either. I think if I had to lean one way, I'd go with Cincinnati, but too many question marks in this game. So probably going to avoid it altogether and just kind of watch it as a fan. Like Jeff Satterfield is going to be doing, man. So the next game is going to be the Las Vegas Bowl, where the Florida Gators are heading out to a surprisingly good Oregon State team, man, that's really finished the season strong, going for their first 10-win season since 2006. Head coach Jonathan Smith got a big 6-year contract extension after the big win over Oregon in the Civil War. So two teams kind of in opposite directions right now. What you thinking on this one, Robert?
So the Florida has a lot of opt-outs. The quarterback opted out. One of the running backs opted out. A couple of wide receivers opted out. 3 or 4 key defensive players opted out. They don't have much coaching transition, and this will be the first year Florida head coach's first chance to show off in a bowl game in Vegas. Oregon State has far fewer opt-outs. The only one of consequence really is a tight end. Otherwise, it's the quarterback who got benched earlier in the year and others who are looking at the transfer portal. They do have some injury issues they have to monitor in the secondary. So because of that, Oregon State, all those that opt-out disparity, and the belief that Florida will have fewer fans in Vegas than Oregon State will due to distance, proximity, and this being a relatively low-profile bowl for Florida, but a high-profile bowl for Oregon State, the line has jumped all the way up to Oregon State by double digits. Oregon State currently favored by 10, total of 52.5. They're basically predicting something like a 31-21 kind of score. They think Oregon State, which loves to run the balls, has struggled to throw the ball this season. will be able to run the ball against a Florida run defense that's without many of its key personnel due to opt-outs, and that was struggled to defend to run all year anyway. Now, I think the caveat to that is, and the public's on Oregon State. Over 60% of the tickets are on Oregon State. 2/3 of the money's on the under. People are expecting a lower scoring game. Basically, they just don't see Florida being able to do much offensively, reflected in a team total around 21, without Anthony Richardson at quarterback and without two of their top 4 wideouts. The flip side to that, however, is that Florida, from just a pure talent perspective, even with the opt-outs, is substantially, from a recruiting ranking perspective, NFL prospect rating perspective, more talented than Oregon State, even within the opt-outs. That's evident in the fact that while it's their 3rd-string quarterback, he's the quarterback who was considered a competitor reaching into the season, a 4-star recruit that was at Ohio State, and they're a very talented quarterback. Jack Miller. He's someone that people really had some hopes and optimism for in Gainesville, much as they did in Columbus a few years ago. Now, in spring games, he has often been up and down, and that's the reason why he didn't win out in the starting position against JT Stroud, nor did he win in JT Stroud, nor did he win in the starting position in Florida against Anthony Richardson. And he's athletic, but not as athletic, anywhere near as athletic as Anthony Richardson. But he might actually be a more accurate passer. Anthony Richardson was very up and down. Don't know why he's leaving for the league. I don't see him being a first-day draft pick. I think that's a mistake on his part. And the second factor is, Florida's in terms of it being a double-digit underdog. If all you did was blindly bet double-digit underdogs in bowl games going on the last decade plus, you would have made money. They've covered it over a 60% clip. So you look at the fact they're a double-digit underdog. You look at the fact they're a publicly disfavored team. The public's on the other side. You look at the fact that they actually have a lot of talent that's underrated. They just haven't had the chance to play so much yet, particularly Zach Miller at the wide receiver position. At quarterback, their main receiver will be available. Their main running backs will be available. Their main offensive line will be available. They were a good running team all year long. So you look at that combination, I see this game as might be a higher scoring game than people think. And if you dig into the data, really Oregon State was an average offense, average defense. On paper, they look like a good offense and a good defense, but that isn't really adjusted to the level of competition. When you do that, you get a team that's pretty much average on both sides of the ball. Florida, you get a good offense statistically throughout the season, though now with a different quarterback, and you get a weak defense. And so what that shows up as a power rating perspective, this game is an even game. But for the opt-outs, Florida would be favored in this game. And I think they may have overpriced the opt-ins, and so I lean Florida in the game.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Vegas did everybody a favor when that line opened up at 5 and then jumped up twice as high to minus 10.5. And that's just too much for an SEC team. This Florida team was a very talented team coming in here. They didn't perform up to that level, but these guys still have a lot of talent here, and that's just way too many points. The over-under also dropped down to 52.5 from 56, and I like the over here now that it's gone low. I don't think Florida's going to have as many problems scoring as what Vegas thinks they will. Like I said, this is still an SEC team that is stacked full of talent. So, yeah, I think the backups here are going to get it done, and they're going to cover that 10.5 spread. I like Florida here and the over.
Yeah, I think this game's going to boil down to who is more motivated and gets ready to go come game time. I think Florida's kind of trying to limp to the finish line, get to the end of this campaign and work for the future. And Oregon State just had a surprisingly really, really good year. Like I said, going for their first 10-win season since 2006. Got a lot of their guys are going to be there in that game. So I like it right here. I don't know enough about Jack Miller, but I like Oregon State right here. I think 10.5. I might buy it down to 10 just to be safe. But I think Oregon State's going to come in more motivated, be ready to play in this game. And I think they're going to give Florida a lot of trouble here. Like I said, Florida's trying to limp to the finish line. So I'm going to take Oregon State right here. Like I said, buy it down to 10. But I'm okay with anything under 11 or so right there. But moving on to the next game, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl between Washington State and the Mountain West champion Fresno State Bulldogs. This is going to be an exciting game, man. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game, but two very capable QBs. Now, the big tidbit is going to be whether Fresno QB Jake Heiner is going to decide to opt out or not. I think he will eventually decide to play, and if he does play, I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one.
Yeah, clearly Vegas expects that because Washington State has more opt-outs than Fresno State does at positions of consequence, including a couple of key receivers and a couple of very talented running backs, including one that's linebackers including one that's considered a first-round draft pick for a defense that up until the last couple of games was one of the better defenses in the nation, actually. So that's why Fresno is favored over its Pac-12 opponent. Now, Fresno has a long history because of so many of its California recruits of playing Pac-12 opponents tough and tight. Did so for most of this year before Haener got hurt against USC. And consequently, Fresno's favored by 3.5, total at 52.5. The public's on the under, which is interesting. And overwhelmingly, the public is betting Fresno State. Almost 70% of the tickets coming in on Fresno. This is another game when I look at talent-wise, this is about even. This is about even when you factor in the opt-outs. This is a pretty evenly talented team from a recruiting perspective because Fresno recruits pretty solid as a mid-major program due to its access to that second-tier talent that some programs miss out on in Central California, in Southern California. Haener has been good, but again, when he came back offensively, this offense struggled even with Haener against decent defenses that schematically matched up like Boise did. They beat Boise to win the Mountain West, but they didn't do so because their offense did a lot. Now, their defense was playing better throughout most of the season, but you break it down, basically Fresno State's kind of an average team on both sides of the ball. Same is kind of true for Washington State, aside for the last two games defensively, where they were actually a good defense until those two games. I think you match that all up. I lean a little bit towards Washington State getting 3.5 in this bowl matchup.
Yeah, because of the opt-outs, I'm staying away here. Washington State had a chance to they dropped the ball severely defensively in those last two games. I mean, last game, if they beat Washington, I think they're in the Pac-12 championship against USC there, but they dropped the ball and lost that game, and that was primarily on defense. So I'm not sure that defense is going to get back together. So for that reason, I'm going to kind of stay away. I agree with you that normally it would be pretty even keel right here, and Fresno State would be in favor there by that much. I tend to lean Washington State, but given that lapse of the defense, I'm just going to stay away from that game here.
Yeah, and one addendum, both Washington State coordinators have also left for other programs.
Yeah, I think this has the potential to be one of the more exciting bowl games of the entire season, man. I think it's going to be kind of a back-and-forth type battle. Vegas feels that way. I don't think either one of these teams deserves to get more than 3 points against the other. So I think if I had to pick a side to lean to, I would lean toward Washington State, being a Pac-12 team, playing a Mountain West team, getting points and all that. But I think if I'm going to look to anything here, I'm going to look to the total, sitting around 52.5, 53, wherever you can find it at. But I look for a lot of points in this one, kind of a back-and-forth type battle, and I think they're going to get over that 52.5. So that's why I'm going to lean in this one. But moving on to the next game, it is going to be the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl between the Air Force Falcons and the Baylor Bears. These two have not met since 1977 and have only played 3 times in the history of their programs. Baylor is 3-0 all-time in this series. So kind of an exciting matchups. Two teams feeling differently about their season. Air Force going for back-to-back 10-win seasons. And Baylor having to feel like they kind of let down, had a lot more top 10 preseason aspirations and things of that nature, and really kind of dropped the ball to finish, not very strong on the season. So which way are you looking in this one?
Yeah, Air Force is almost 6-point underdogs, 5.5 to 6, depending on where you get it. Public is betting on Air Force, over 60% of the tickets. Total at 48.5. So they're basically predicting a Baylor win of something like 27-21. They're expecting Baylor to contain that Air Force triple option attack. I would say that if I had a lean, and I don't have a strong feel for the game because this is really all about how well Baylor prepares for that Air Force offense. Given extra time, bowl teams have often, with good defensive coordinators, have often overachieved against triple option style attacks. And this goes back to Georgia Tech and other teams, that they run into a little trouble when somebody's got 3-4 weeks to prepare for them. The question is, how mentally focused is Baylor? And that's far from clear. As you note, disappointing finish of the season, had a chance to take out TCU, had a chance, and that was like there was, revenge aspects to that game. So I think that the fact that I don't know what the motivational nature of Baylor is, it leads me to lay off the game. I know Air Force is going to come to play because the academies always come to play in bowl games. The doubts about Baylor's motivation lead me to stay away from the spread. Currently, if I had to take one, I would take Air Force, though I would like it to get it to 6 or higher.
Yeah, I'll vouch for you on the triple option there as a former Georgia Tech fan, a big Paul Johnson fan, man. It was even when we had 9 and 10 win seasons. It was exciting, but you knew, okay, in 4 weeks we're going to lose this bowl game no matter what, because they've got plenty of time to prepare for the triple option and they'll get it figured out and they'll get it stuffed. Roberts has ran really well for Air Force this year. That rushing attack has been pretty incredible to watch, and I think that'll be fun to watch again in this game. But I think Baylor just having that time to prepare is going to be enough. But I think the spread's going to be right where it should be. I think they're going to win this game by right about 6 points. So I'm staying away here.
Yeah, I think the key matchup in this is going to be the Air Force running game, which is leading the country in 330 rushing yards per game. As you mentioned, Brad Roberts had a great season, third among FBS running backs in total yards with 1,612 and has added 15 TDs with that. So Baylor's since dismissed their defensive coordinator, Ron Roberts, after the season. So they're going to be going in with a new DC. And I think it's going to be the key matchup in this game on whether they can stop that Air Force running game or not. I think 5.5 right here is a little too many points. I'd probably buy it up to 6 just to save myself. But I like Air Force right here. As you mentioned, Bob, the academies always come to play in these bowl games. As mentioned before, going for their second straight 10-win season. So I like the Falcons right here. And I think that running game is going to be able to do some things, really give Baylor some trouble. So I like Air Force plus 5.5 right here. Like I said, probably buy it up to 6, but I'm okay with that. And moving on to the next one, the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl, where the Missouri Tigers and the Wake Forest Demon Deacons come into this one, both really feeling very, very different about how their seasons ended. Missouri's won 4 of the last 6 games to rally to 6-6, while Wake Forest has lost 4 of 5 to slump down to 7-5. So kind of a matchup of two teams headed in different directions right here.
Yeah, you have two teams that from a talent perspective pretty equal, maybe a slight edge to Missouri. In terms of opt-outs, Missouri had a big wide receiver opt-out, but otherwise not a big gap in opt-outs between the two teams. Both teams have pretty stable coaching staffs currently. Missouri is 1-point underdog, so they're basically predicting of just a very tight game. High total for a Missouri game this season, 60.5. Public is 80% on the under. They think they're respecting Missouri's defense. Or maybe disrespecting Missouri's offense, or a combination of the two. But they're overwhelmingly on Missouri on the tickets. 2/3 of the tickets coming in on Missouri. There's some trend lines. Teams that win their last game to get to 6-6, to get to a bowl game, have a tendency of covering in these bowl games. So that favors Mizzou. Personally, I think these teams are about equal. So I think the line is about correct. It's really hard to read Missouri's defense. At times they were really suffocating. But when they went up against sophisticated passing attacks like Tennessee, they looked like they didn't belong on the same field. Wake Forest does have a sophisticated passing attack. And so for all of those reasons, I don't have a strong lean either on the total or on the spread either way. I think it should be a good game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a shootout. I think Hartman's going to be the difference maker there. With 3,500 yards and 35 touchdowns this year, he's been a beast. And yeah, sophisticated passing offense for sure. Yeah, and for that reason, I kind of like Wake Forest in this game. They started out incredible, looked really good playing in the ACC play there, but then really fell off the wagon there at the end of the year. But I think I can look for them to bounce back and have a good game in the bowl game here. And I expect to be a shootout, so I'm staying away from that over. But I like Wake Forest in this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna avoid this one altogether. Just kind of sit back and watch it as a fan. Like I said, I'm interested to see how Sam Hartman responds. Going to play at least one more game for Wake Forest. I'm pretty sure he has eligibility to be able to come back if he wants to. Don't know about the transfer portal and stuff after the fact, but I'm interested to see how he performs against the Missouri defense. Has shown to be very susceptible to a high-powered passing attack this year. So I'm going to sit back and watch this. And the spread's a little funny for me, but it should, like you said, Bob, should be a very exciting game. And the next one, the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, the Oklahoma State Cowboys versus the Wisconsin Badgers, a matchup between two teams who will not have their starting quarterbacks from earlier in this season, as QB Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State and Graham Hurts at Wisconsin have both entered the transfer portal. And the two Badgers backups, Chase Wolf and Miles Burkett, have attempted a combined 11 passes this season. So nobody really sure-handed, ready to go at the QB position right there.
Yeah, and you have Wisconsin. It'll be the last game that Jim Leonard will coach as interim head coach since he was passed over for Luke Fickell. With new quarterbacks and in some cases new coaches, this is a game that it's very tough to handicap. The Wisconsin's favored by 3. and almost 60% of the tickets are on Wisconsin. That's probably because people have seen the Oklahoma State backup quarterbacks, and they've been atrocious this season. They haven't seen the Wisconsin backup quarterback, so they don't know if they're atrocious. Maybe they're not. Low total 43, reflective of the fact that that because of the offensive issues on both sides of the ball. So they're basically predicting a 23-20 Wisconsin win. Public is hammering the over. It's over 70% on the over, and like I said, a lean on the points towards Wisconsin, a lean on the money line towards Oklahoma State. So people that like the Cowboys are getting the plus 130, getting the extra value. I would say plus 130, plus 125 is not great value when you can get plus 3, because you should be getting plus 150 at that rate. You're better value if you like the Cowboys. Take the points. Don't be tempted by the money line. If you like Wisconsin, Wisconsin's minus 150 and minus 3. That's about the same either way. Because of the coaching changes, because of the quarterback opt-outs, this is a game I'm not getting anywhere near. Because it's another one of those bowl games. You're like, who's going to show up and why? And is either backup any? Could they be possibly good if their Oklahoma State quarterback's given backup several weeks to prepare? What's the psychological impact? I mean, Mertz, several years with Wisconsin, now abandons it. Spencer Sanders, there at Oklahoma State forever, was sort of their hero throughout the season. Now all of a sudden walks away, shocked a lot of people down there in Stillwater. I don't know the psychological impact of it, so it kind of scares me from getting anywhere near it. If I had to take a bet, I would take Oklahoma State on the points, just because really it probably should be a pick'em game given the uncertainties and the relative talent levels of these two teams. Mike Gundy, by the way, just a reminder for everybody out there, is still one of the best spread cover coaches in all of college football when an underdog.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm staying away from this game because of all those reasons. I will say, though, that for Wisconsin, I think a difference maker might end up being their running back, Allen there. Braylon Allen's rushed for over 1,100 yards this season and a monster 6.6 yards per rush, which has been huge. He's only 208 carries to get there.
There were rumors he might enter the transfer portal too, but I assume that nothing's been confirmed as yet.
Correct. Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, when I checked, he was still going to play. Correct.
And Wisconsin might have a motivational edge if they really want to give Jim Leonard they apparently really like Jim Leonard, longtime Wisconsin player, longtime defensive coordinator. So that is but you never know. Do they really like wanting to play for him, or are they so kind of disappointed he didn't get the job that they aren't really focused?
Well, Luke Fickell has come out and said he will be the acting head coach in this game, so he is going to go ahead and coach the game.
Really?
What I read earlier today is that he will be the acting head coach. He's going to have 6 assistants that have been with Wisconsin all year long. Leonard involved in that and stuff. But it said he will be the acting head coach in this game. So, but go ahead, Cody.
Interesting.
I was unaware of that as well. But yeah, as far as I knew, Allen was still playing, and I think he might be the difference maker. He's a beast of a running back. So.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on this one. Too many question marks. Like I said, even with Luke Fickell head coaching the quarterback stuff, all that. Just too many question marks right here. It'd be a fun game to sit back and watch because you get a pretty good idea of what both these teams are going to have going into next season. But from a gambling standpoint, like you said, I think it should be a pick 'em, and you might as well just flip a coin in this one and to decide, really. So I'm going to avoid this one and just watch it as a fan as well. But moving on to the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, the Arkansas Razorbacks playing the Kansas Jayhawks. Man, two teams that feel very differently about their 6-6 records. Kansas, big step forward in Lance Leipold's second season, have a chance to beat an SEC opponent for the first time since 1985. They actually haven't played one since 1988, so they don't get to do this a whole lot. But Arkansas has played one of the toughest schedules in the country, losing 4 of its 6 games by a total of 9 points. Got several opt-outs, though. All-American linebacker Drew Sanders not going to play in this game. They've lost defensive coordinator Barry Odom, who became the new head coach at UNLV. And then star linebacker, one of my favorite names in college football, Bumper Poole, is out with an injury. And leading receiver Jaden Hazelwood is also bypassing the game after declaring for the draft. So a lot of guys not going to be playing this game for Arkansas. But how you leaning in this one, man?
Yeah, it's another one where there's a lot of X factors. So Arkansas favored by 3 and the total is 69. So they think it's going to be a high-scoring game. They think it's going to be 36-33, Arkansas. 3/4 of the bets on the spread is on Kansas. 3/4 of the money line bets are on Kansas. Almost 90% of the total tickets are on the over. So they're remembering an Arkansas defense that got scorched a lot all year. but an offense that could be explosive when KJ Jefferson was healthy like he is for this game. And a Kansas defense that mostly got torched all year. And a Kansas offense that was explosive and fun. So I think there's a perception that Kansas has a motivational edge because this is one of their only bowl games in forever. And that Arkansas is disappointed at 6-6. I don't know how disappointed Arkansas is at 6-6 in the sense that Arkansas was trying to be a competitive team and they succeeded in doing that. I wasn't like Arkansas really thought they're going to win the SEC West or something. From a talent perspective, Arkansas still has an edge in this game. It is a little nerve-wracking that their only good defensive players are out because this was a defense at times was atrocious, and without the genius of Barry Odom to go up against the genius of Lance Leopold, that does suggest a Kansas offensive edge. Daniels, I think, is healthy and back, and they obviously have a decent backup who played well throughout the season when he had to play. But and so I look at this, I lean a little bit towards the Hogs just because of the talent edge Arkansas has, and I don't think they'll have a motivational disadvantage. I think they'll be excited to play. They're going to have a lot of fans there in Memphis. We'll see if Kansas football occasionally does show up. This is a rare bowl game. Maybe they'll show up in Memphis. I don't think they're going to outnumber Arkansas fans that literally just drive across the border to watch their team play. And so I think that the public is on the wrong side on this one. I have no doubt Kansas won't be able to stop Arkansas. The only question is, will Arkansas's defense be able to hang in there against Kansas? I think they will enough to, especially given it a lot of time to prepare for Leopold's offense, which is mostly built on scheme rather than talent. Arkansas is a bunch of big hogs that can just line up and run the ball on you over and over and over again. It's talent. Doesn't require a lot of scheme, even though Kendall Browse probably had a down year offensively as one of the better offensive coordinators in college football and maybe looking to exit, but he needs a good game as well, coaching-wise, given the down offensive year they had relative to expectations concerning his abilities. So I lean a little bit towards the Hogs in this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I'm staying away from it because I don't like to bet with my heart, and I've grown to kind of love Kansas. But, same as the triple spread option there, what you're looking at is when you have a system that relies not upon talent but scheme, and you have 3-4 weeks to prepare for such scheme, you can't really prepare for talent, but you can prepare for scheme, and that's something that's bit teams like this in the ass going way back. So, again, kind of like that triple spread option, I'd be wary of Kansas here because with that much time to prepare, Arkansas's got the edge there. So, yeah, I'm going to stay away again because of my personal love for Kansas this year and their love for Lance Leipold. I hope he sticks around in Kansas. It'd be fun to watch them again next year with this. A lot of people, I think of him losing more at the end of the year there. He had some really impressive wins early on, really tight games and in games where he almost won that people saw he had no business even being in the game, being double-digit underdogs at times. But so, yeah, I go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I thought Leopold would be gone by this point. A surprise that, Auburn passed him over, Nebraska passed him over, Wisconsin passed him over, Cincinnati passed him over, Louisville passed him over.
I was really surprised about the latter. I wasn't so surprised about Auburn, but, Wisconsin – I guess they kind of had an eye on their man anyways early on, but yeah, Nebraska. Yeah, I was really surprised. Cincinnati.
A lot of them, I think, hired great coaches. It's just, here's one of the most successful building coaches in the country. And it's not even clear he got an interview. Arizona State, similarly, so now maybe he just really likes Kansas. Right. But he might have a statement to make. So, it wouldn't shock me to see Kansas go out there and put a number on a bad Arkansas defense without their key players and defensive coordinator. But to your point about offenses, the other schematic offense that has struggled like this is the air raid. The air raid offense that invented by the legendary Mike Leach, who recently passed away, it also struggled frequently in bowl games because you just get time to prepare, and scheme is not something that counteracts talent. And that's where I think Arkansas has the edge.
Yeah, Les Leipold actually has signed an extension down there. They made that big announcement when they hosted TCU and got their first game day ever. They're going to build a $300 million athletic complex and all that stuff. So doing some big things out there in Jayhawk country for those guys. But I think this is going to be an exciting game. I think it's potentially maybe the most exciting game of the bowl season. I think there's going to be a lot of points back and forth. If Arkansas had its top two linebackers and Drew Sanders and Bumper Pool playing, I would feel a little bit differently about the Arkansas defense. But I think with those two guys missing in the middle of that defense, I think it's Kansas going to be able to really do some things offensively and push the ball up and down the field. So I look for a lot of points. The total sitting very high, around 67.5. Open at 67.5. I think it's up to 68.5 now. But I'm going to go over in this one. I look for a back and forth type game and a battle. It's going to be really fun to watch, and I expect a lot of points in this one. But moving on to the next game, the San Diego Credit Union Holiday Bowl, with two teams that the Oregon Ducks and the North Carolina Tar Heels, two teams that got to feel like they let one slip away and probably expect to be playing in a much more prestigious bowl this time of year. They both started 8-1, kind of faltered down the stretch. But you got Bo Nix, not sure if he's going to come back for another season next year. He has another year eligibility, so I think he will come back. He's been on record saying this is one of the most fun football seasons he's had in his lifetime. And on the other side, you got QB Drake May, one of the rising stars in college football, who I think will be a future first-round pick. So a really exciting offense is on the field. This could be a fun game to watch as well.
Yeah, the North Carolina offensive coordinator is gone. He's gone to Wisconsin, I believe. So the question is how that impacts their play calling in this game. There were a lot of people that thought May might enter the transfer portal. He did not. He announced he's returning to North Carolina. Not a surprise if you knew May and his history of ties to the school. Oregon, big favorites, 14-point double-digit favorites. And even though they're with a high total at 72, so they're basically predicting something like a 43 29 or something in that kind of neighborhood kind of game. So they don't, North Carolina's defense has mostly been atrocious all year, and Oregon's offense has been explosive most of the year. So that part's not a surprise. Oregon's defense hasn't been great, but they're expecting that North Carolina's offensive woes down the stretch of the season they think it will continue, especially without their offensive coordinator. 2/3 of the tickets are on Oregon, despite that big number, about evenly split on the total. I think if you look at this, that a lot of people who are betting Carolina are taking the big money on the money line of plus 400 or so. I look at this game again, double-digit favorites, bowl games since the last 20 years or so has been a fade. You fade the favorite, you take the dog in that kind of situation. I think May has plenty to prove. He got passed over for even getting to the Heisman ceremony when many think he was the best quarterback in the country. Sometimes you could argue by a long mile, frankly. The Oregon defense has not proven itself very capable at all. So to me, I think the total. It wouldn't surprise me to see the total go over. I think this will be a shootout back and forth. But I think I think the sports gamblers and Vegas are slightly underestimating May. Clemson was a different animal. Oregon's not Clemson's defense or anything vaguely resembling it. And so I think you add those up. Now, there was talk that this might be Mack Brown's last game. Apparently, Mack Brown has not made any announcement in that respect, so maybe not. Maybe he's going to come back for another season. But I lean Carolina catching 14 points in the bowl game.
Yeah, it's too many points. Drake May, 4,100 yards, 35 touchdowns. Just absolute beast all season long. Super fun to watch. I can't wait for this game. It's going to be a lot of offense, which I love. But you're absolutely right. I mean, them playing Clemson in the ACC championship game and not being able to score as much, this is not Clemson's defense or anything near it at all whatsoever. So, yeah, this is going to be a shootout, back and forth. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But 14 points is way too many for Drake May in that offense. He's just way too good. And I agree, he got robbed. He should at least been in the room as far as the Heisman was concerned. So.
Yeah, I'm with you guys here. That's way too many points for this offense. You mentioned North Carolina offensive coordinator has gone elsewhere, and as has the Oregon offensive coordinator. Kenny Dillingham is going to be the new head coach at Arizona State. So, how well does that offense click with a new coordinator come in? Will Stein will be the new offensive coordinator out at Oregon. But like I said, I think in this game, 2 touchdowns is far too many points for either one of these teams. And I look for North Carolina, man. This might be one of your long shot bets where you might sprinkle a little bit on that money line with the Tar Heels, because it's going to pay off big for you if it hits. But I think I'm with you guys. I think 14 points is far too many points in this game. But moving on to the Tax Act Texas Bowl, the Texas Tech Red Raiders will be playing the Ole Miss Rebels. Two teams are going in opposite directions when the regular season concluded. Ole Miss trying to navigate through a wave of coaching drama with Lane Kiffin, all that stuff. Is he going to Auburn? Is he not? Got to affect those players a little bit. But they really did not finish the season strong, losing 4 of their last 5, I believe. Texas Tech on a 3-game winning streak, getting that thrilling win over Oklahoma in the last game of the season, 51-48 in overtime. So two teams kind of heading different directions right here.
No doubt. What's interesting is a little bowl sports betting tip. Teams that are on a losing streak heading into bowl games can overachieve. Teams that are heading on a winning, unless they were underdogs in those games. So if a team was both an underdog and lost outright in the last 2 games, that's a sign of a team that probably isn't that talented or good to be in a bowl game in the first place. And those kind of teams do tend to struggle. They tend to have got to a bowl game based on early season performance against weaker foes often. By contrast, but interesting enough, teams on a winning streak going into bowl season tend to underachieve when they get to the bowl season. So that would favor a little bit Ole Miss here. Ole Miss was favored in several of the games that they lost down the stretch. Ole Miss favored here by 3 and a hook. The money pretty much evenly split on the tickets. Total is 69 and a half. Different places you can get anywhere from 69 to 70. Public is a hammer in the over. They think this is the Ole Miss team that's just going to rock and roll in terms of its offensive ability, but have some scattered defensive issues like it did against Arkansas, though they played pretty good against the air raid of Mississippi State at the end of the season and played pretty good against Alabama's offense. So the defense was hit or miss for sure, but otherwise, but wasn't always bad. Whereas Texas Tech's offense was up and down much of the season. So I look at this game, you look at it from a talent perspective, favors Ole Miss. You look at it from a year-to-date over the course of a season, favors on the statistical metrics, favors Ole Miss. I think Kiffin will be determined. He knows these games are significant, so he has a tendency to cover when he can, where he can. I think he will if he can at all here. So I don't think there's a big motivational gap between these two teams. So I lean towards the SEC in a short favorite situation, like against a lesser talented foe. So I lean towards Ole Miss here.
Yeah, talent's too much here. I like Mississippi. And I think I look for Quinshawn Judkins and Jackson Dart to take care of business here. There's too much talent on the SEC to deal with. Texas Tech won't be able to keep up, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this is a Texas Tech team that's used to playing in big games. They played 6 games this year where the team was ranked nationally at the time of the game, so they know what it's like to play in big games. But I think the key matchup here is going to be the sensational freshman Quinshawn Judkins, running back for Ole Miss. Whether he can, this is a Texas Tech defense that allowed 166.4 rush yards per game, good enough for 90th nationally. So I think Ole Miss could be able to establish that running game and be able to really sustain some drives, put some points on the board. So I'd probably buy it down to a field goal just to be safe. 3.5, always scares me right there. So I'll buy it down to a field goal just to save you in case they have to win it late or something. But I like Ole Miss right here and their talent. I think they're going to be able to overcome Texas Tech in this game and really end the season on a high note. All the Lane Kiffin questions are done now. He's got his contract extension, going to be making like $9 million a year or something now down there. So those players don't have to focus on that anymore. They're going to be able to just focus on playing football. And I think Ole Miss's talent will get them over the top in this game. And I'm okay, like I said, buy it down to a field goal, but I like Ole Miss right here minus the 3.5. The next game, the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl, the Syracuse Orangemen and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Excuse me. But yeah, this is going to be another game I'm interested to see right here. Two teams, Syracuse started 6-0, but really fizzled down that stretch, losing 5 of their last 6, finally getting a win over Boston College in the season finale. And Minnesota has had one of the top defenses in the country all year long. They actually have a strong offense as well, but just haven't been able to put it together in some games. So, two teams really got a lot of question marks right here.
Yeah, the Minnesota quarterback should be back and healthy. What's interesting is, I see these two teams from a recruiting perspective, from an NFL talent perspective, from most objective assessments, they're pretty equal talent-wise. Neither team's like stacked with talent. They're both well-coached, kind of overachieve a little bit. But basically, they're the same kind of team. And this bowl played in New York, I think favors Syracuse just by that fact alone. The Pinstripe Bowl reflecting the New York Yankees. So I look at Minnesota's favored by 7.5. Public pretty evenly split. Total of 42, low total. So they're basically predicting something like a 25-17 kind of game, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think that's probably a little high for Minnesota. Syracuse defensive schemes have been pretty solid, and pedestrian offenses that don't have explosive talent have not. Syracuse has done really quite well against, whether you're looking at Purdue or NC State or any of those other teams. And so I think the spread is too high. So I lean towards Syracuse catching more than a touchdown and what I think will be a quasi home game.
Correct. Yeah. And like you said, the talent is pretty much even here on these two teams. And for that reason alone, 7.5 is too high. So yeah, I like Syracuse catching 7.5 points here, and I stay away from the over under.
Yeah, this one I'm going to ride the momentum in on this one. I think Minnesota, I like PJ Fleck. I like what that defense has done all year long. Syracuse has lost both of their coordinators since the end of the regular season. So we're going to have two new guys going there. How polished are they going to be on both sides of the ball in that aspect? The home game aspect pretty much for Syracuse does help me a little bit, but I like Minnesota in this game. I like this defense. I like what they've done all year long. I think they continue to do that. I think they're going to try to end the season on a high note, get 9 wins this year, moving to next season with some momentum. So I'm going to like Minnesota right here. I think 7.5, I'm going to buy it down to a touchdown just in case I get the push if they win by a TD or something like that. But I like this Minnesota defense, man. I really, really do. I think they're going to be able to do some big things in this bowl game, and I look for Minnesota to get a big win in this thing. So, but moving on to the next, this is a crazy matchup right here, man. In the Cheez-It Bowl, going to be in Orlando, Florida, where you have the Oklahoma Sooners, who have really had a letdown type season in Brent Venables' first year as the head coach out there. And then you got the Florida State Seminoles, man, who have been a pleasant surprise for their fans this year, looking to do some big things in this game.
Yeah, Florida State heavy favorites, 7.5. Over 80% of the tickets coming in on Florida State, almost 90% of the money line tickets coming in on Florida State. Total at 65.5. So they're basically predicting that, Florida State gets to the high 30s and Oklahoma maybe gets up towards 30. So the lack of confidence in Oklahoma's defense and a lot of confidence in Florida State's offense, which was pretty good all year long. No major opt-outs that I'm aware of for Florida State. There are some key opt-outs for Oklahoma, but not at the quarterback position. It's the running backs, the offensive line. It's a couple of other positions. But I think, Venables has a lot to prove. He needs to not get blown out in his first year coaching Oklahoma. Disappointing season for them. They really need to start to set the right track for year 2. I think, Dylan Gabriel, can be a real troublemaker for Florida State's defense. So I look at this, and again, I see two teams that from a talent perspective are pretty equal. That, Florida State has some edges in terms of performance during the season, edges in terms of who's opt out and who's not. But I don't think that's worth 7 and a hook. So I would lean towards Oklahoma catching a touchdown and an extra. They realistically 7 and a hook is more likely 10. There's some 8s and 9s that hit, but they're not that common, they're not key numbers at all. So when you get that extra hook, I kind of like it. So I lean towards the Sooners, and it's mostly a bet that Brent Venables is going to really prepare and have this team motivated to play, giving him several weeks to prepare and to show off that he's a much better defensive coach than we saw during the regular season.
As far as I knew, Eric Gray and Mims Jr. were still going to play. Is that right?
They have since opted out.
Oh, okay. Well, that changes things a little bit for me. But initially, I'm not that much, because I think, quarterback wise, Gabriel's a better quarterback, slight edge to him there. And I think in this game, 7.5 is just too many. Again, with all that talent, initially I thought Gray and Mims Jr. were playing, which would have had, all the 3 skill positions, would have been favorable to Oklahoma as far as the offense was concerned. But maybe Florida State by 3 in this game, but 7.5 is just too many. And like you said, with that hook, you just always feel a little extra comfort with that little 0.5 there with you. Because that 8 and 9 is so uncommon, it's almost like having 10 points. So yeah, I lean towards Oklahoma in this game.
Yeah, Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis has already announced he's going to be coming back next season. You have all ACC players, Jamie Robinson and Jared Verse, have said they will play in the bowl game. So FSU going to be pretty much at full strength for what they've been the last 2 months of the season. Virtual home game for these guys in Orlando. Probably going to travel really well with that fan base, just coming over from Tallahassee. So I like the Noles right here. I think they're kind of headed in a different direction than Oklahoma. Oklahoma's got a lot of questions going into the offseason. I think they'll be able to rebound and get better in Brent Venables' second season next year. But I like what Florida State's done this year. Man, I didn't really expect them to be this good and they've really played really, really well down the stretch since that 3-game losing streak in the middle of the year. So I like Florida State right here. And all these hooks, I'm going to buy it down to a touchdown just in case. But I like Florida State right here. I think they're going to get a big-time win and really build some momentum going into next season, trying to get their first 10-win season since 2016. So I like the Seminoles right here. Like I said, I'm going to buy it down, but I look for big things out of Florida State in this game. The next game, the Valero Alamo Bowl, the Texas Longhorns playing the Washington Huskies, man, in a game where Washington's got to kind of feel like they got kicked in the gut when they helped Utah get into that Pac-12 title game, and Utah winds up beating USC and will now go to the Rose Bowl, and Washington gets the consolation prize of heading to the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, it's the Alamo Bowl in Texas, so against Texas. Texas favored by 4.5, total of 68.5, pretty high scoring, but that kind of makes sense given both these. Particularly Washington's offense has been very explosive all year. Its defense has been a little weak. Texas on paper can be an explosive offense, but that was sporadic down the stretch. So the total of 68.5, you're basically looking at with the spread. Texas, Vegas predicting a score of 36-32 in favor of Texas or thereabouts. Over 80% of the tickets are on Washington. Over 90% of the money line bets are on Washington. And nearly 90% of the tickets are on the over. As people are expecting a higher scoring game than expected here. I lean towards Texas in the under. The reason for it is the one thing that's actually been quietly consistent about Texas almost all year has been their defense. They even shut down the great TCU offense. I mean, they would have won that game, but for their own offense imploding. Quinn Ewers was a little up and down. Now he gets a whole bowl season to prep and prepare. He's got Arch Manning coming in, waiting in the wings for next season. He needs a really good game. Sarkisian is one of the better game planners out there. I think he is going to. Washington's defense did not show a lot all year. And I think if you prepare right and create pressure on Penix, then that Washington offense can definitely struggle. And the Texas defense, again, TCU is probably the most analogous. They basically shut them down. So I lean towards the under because I think Texas defense will do well. You could take the Washington team total under instead as maybe a better bet. But I lean against the public and towards Texas in a basic home game favored by 4.5.
Yeah, I agree with that. That Texas defense has looked real good starting with their first game against Alabama. I think that's going to be too much for Washington to overcome. And like you said, when Penix Jr. gets pressured like that, he tends to fall apart a little bit. So, yeah, I like Texas in the points here.
Yeah, Washington has made leaps and bounds forward in head coach Kalen DeBoer's first season. They were 4-8 last year and pretty much overnight became a Pac-12 contender this season. Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback, has had a great season. Quinn Ayers, the quarterback for Texas, is a great player in his own right. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one. Another exciting game back and forth. I don't think either one of these teams deserves to get more than a field goal in this game, so I'm going to lean toward Washington right here. Plus 4.5. I think it's going to be a close game, battling back and forth. I think a team may have to win it by a field goal late, something like that. But you're going to see a lot of points. It's going to be exciting, very entertaining to watch. But I'm going to have to lean toward Washington right here, getting the 4.5. Let's move on to the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, where the UCLA Bruins will play the Pitt Panthers. And for the second straight season, Pitt will be playing without their starting quarterback that they have had all season long, as Keaton Slovis hit the transfer portal. They had Kenny Pickett opt out last year in that game against Michigan State. But Keaton Slovis in the transfer portal, so they're going to have to go with one of their backups, a very defensive-minded coach in Pat Narduzzi. But look for some things in this game.
And who has opted out for UCLA so far?
I haven't seen a complete list. It looks like, as of right now, most of the guys that they're big dogs looks like they're gonna be going. I think DTR hasn't said anything yet. You still got a little bit of time in this one. Still a little bit away, a couple weeks away for those guys to decide that. But as of right now, it looks like UCLA is going to be going close to full strength.
So the UCLA favored by 6.5, total of 57.5. Lower total because of respect for Pitt's defense, given how good UCLA's offense has been throughout the year. Basically, predicting a score of something like 31-26, 32-25, something in that neighborhood. Pitt, as you note, their offense without Keaton Slovis, he had just transferred from USC to Pitt in the offseason. Then Pitt decided to revert to a much more conventional Narduzzi style offense that wants to run, and not worry too much about the pass. That's the other reason for the lower than normal total for a UCLA game. I would lean UCLA in this game because I think UCLA is excited about their season. Granted, very disappointed they didn't get to the Pac-12 title game. Very disappointed to lose late against USC. But you're talking about some players that have been there for a long time for Chip Kelly. For some of them, their last game. I think they're going to be excited. They're not traveling too far to Arizona to play in the Sun Bowl. I don't think you're going to see a ton of Pitt fans make that trip. And you have questions at quarterback clearly with Pitt. And you have a solid defense, but that UCLA team, almost nobody could stop them all year long. So I lean towards UCLA. The public is 2/3 of the public's on UCLA, evenly split on the total. Over 80% of the money line on UCLA. So I see why the public favors UCLA. I likely won't get to the window with it, but I share their UCLA sympathies in this game because of the quarterback issue for Pitt.
Yeah, I do as well. And talent-wise, this is a more talented team. I think this is a 10-point gap talent-wise. So UCLA sitting at -6 here on a neutral site. I like it. Plus, UCLA is easier. Southern California is an easier trip to El Paso, Texas than Pittsburgh is. So I think the fans will travel just a little bit easier. But yeah, I like UCLA here in the points. Just the talent gap is the big difference maker for me.
Yeah, I like UCLA in this game as well, especially with all the question marks at quarterback for Pittsburgh. The key for me here is going to be whether the UCLA run defense that was second in the Pac-12 in yards per rush allowed this year can stop Pittsburgh running back Israel Abanaconda, who's rushed for 1,431 yards and 20 touchdowns this year. It's really been a great player in his own right this year. But UCLA gave up 565 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground in 3 losses this year. So it's really going to boil down to whether they can stop that rushing attack for Pitt. I think they're going to be able to put up points, but I'm okay with taking UCLA anything under a touchdown right here. I think they're going to show up, try to end this season on a high note. A lot of these guys come back to play for Chip Kelly and stuff like that. And like I said, haven't seen any major opt-outs right now. So it looks like they'll be going close to full strength. And I like UCLA in this game. I think anything under a touchdown, you're okay taking that. Moving on to the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, where the Notre Dame Fighting Irish will be taking on the South Carolina Gamecocks. South Carolina ending the season with 2 wins over top 10 teams, defeating Tennessee and Clemson for the first time, beating 2 top 10 teams in back-to-back weeks for the first time in program history. Notre Dame started out the season a little rough, man, losing that game at home to Marshall, but really have kind of turned it around. Only game they've lost in their last 5 games was on the road at USC. So look for some exciting things in this one as well.
And I think I haven't seen any major opt-outs for either team. Other than I think the tight end may be out for Notre Dame.
He is. He has opted out. Michael Mayer will not be playing, and the career linebacker and career sacks leader Isaiah Foskey has also opted out for Notre Dame.
All right, so a couple of key players for Notre Dame, but the most of them will be there in full throttle. South Carolina, Notre Dame is favored by a little less than a field goal, 2.5 points, total at 52. They're basically predicting a 27-25 game. Almost 80% of every ticket that's available, money line or spread, is coming in on South Carolina because of those 2 big upset wins that knocked Tennessee out of the playoff and then knocked Clemson, their rival, out of the playoff. Where all of a sudden Spencer Rattler, who had been mostly awful all year long, played like his Heisman prospect self from a couple of years ago in his final 2 games. The question is, you give a Notre Dame pass defense 3 to 4 weeks to prepare. Will we see the Rattler we've mostly seen over his career, or we see the Rattler we saw in his last 2 games? I lean to think we're going to see the Rattler we've seen over most of his career, given Notre Dame that much time. I lean towards the Fighting Irish over the Fighting Chickens in this one.
Yeah, I'm staying away from it. Rattler was trash all year long, and those last 2 games, he just played like he was the best quarterback in the nation. And I just can't trust who's going to show up, because if that Rattler shows up, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot Notre Dame can do, even if they prepare with him. If that Rattler shows up, he just looked so good in those 2 games. He was so dominant. But that guy hadn't been present ever in his career before that. So, I mean, you saw flashes in the pan during games, but never full games of him playing that well. And so for that reason, I don't trust who's going to show up. I'm staying away from this game altogether.
Yeah, I think South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer done an excellent job in his first year. Had to be up there for coach of the year. I mean, really, they took a couple beatdowns this year, 48-7 to Georgia and then 38-6 to Florida. and really bounce back. He got those teams to respond in the coming weeks after those games and really battle back. And they put together a great 8-4 season, man, going for 9 wins in this game. I love what they've done. They do have tight end running back Jaheim Bell for South Carolina has entered the transfer portal. So a guy they kind of use in that offense, try to utilize and move around some, but he has decided to transfer. He's not going to be there with them for that game. But I like South Carolina in this game. I think they continue the momentum. I think it's sitting around 2.5 right now. I'm going to buy it up to a field goal. That way it saves me if Notre Dame wins it late or something like that. But I like South Carolina right here. I think they continue this momentum, and I think South Carolina's going to do some big things in the coming years. It kind of hurts my feelings in that SEC East being a Tennessee Vols fan, because I know it's another team we're going to have to deal with. But I like the direction South Carolina's headed, and I think Spencer Rattler, playing the last couple games, a couple of those games that we expected to see out of him his whole career. And I think Shane Beamer continues to develop him and move forward in the right direction. So I like South Carolina right here. I'd buy it up to a field goal, but I like the Gamecocks. Moving on to the Capital One Ultimate Orange Bowl between the Tennessee Vols and the Clemson Tigers, man. 2 teams that, kind of disappointing toward the end of the season, but really Tennessee. I mean, as a Tennessee fan, you can vouch for me on this, Uncle Bob, but really above and beyond expectations for this year in Josh Heupel's second season.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think normally you would expect this to be a very good game. 2 teams that got knocked out of the playoff by the same South Carolina opponent at the very end of the year. 2 teams both coming in with backup quarterbacks, but for different reasons. The 2 teams that have both orange and both deep fan bases playing in a big Super 6 bowl game. However, the X factor will be certain injuries and opt-outs for Tennessee. So Clemson is favored by a little under a touchdown, 6.5. Public slightly leaning towards Tennessee. Total at 63.5. So basically, they're predicting something like 35-29, 30, somewhere in that kind of neighborhood kind of score. Understandably, because Tennessee's defense has been shaky at times in the season, and Tennessee's offense at times was unstoppable. The reason why I would lean towards Clemson in this game is because the big one is the quarterback. The drop off from Hendon Hooker to Joe Mixon, the backup, is just too big. I think against a quality defense like Clemson. Clemson also, I think, is better off without DJ Ukulele and with that young, super talented freshman, as he proved in the North Carolina game and towards the end of the season. And now we'll have a whole bowl season to prep. And so you look, Clemson does have a talent edge over Tennessee as well. And then of course Hyatt is also opted out. I think Cedric Tillman is there's a bunch of big receivers that are out. So too many key personnel for Tennessee that are out. I think, the loss to South Carolina plus the injury to Hooker kind of ended Tennessee's season. And I think they'll be, you would think they would be really pumped to play in the Orange Bowl against a team like Clemson, but these opt-outs signal something else. And so I think I lean towards Clemson in this game. Love to see Tennessee beat Dabo Swinney in Miami, but I don't see that as likely with especially the loss of – if Hendon Hooker was playing, I'd be betting Tennessee. Without him, I got to go the other way.
Yeah, this Orange Bowl is definitely orange for sure, with Tennessee and Clemson both playing in it. So that was an interesting tidbit. But yeah, it's a clear downgrade in quarterbacks from Hendon Hooker to Joe Milton, and an upgrade, in my opinion, in Clemson with the quarterback switch there. So, and for that reason, yeah, I'm the same way. I lean towards Clemson here. I'm probably going to stay away altogether because that Tennessee offense, that Milton has an arm. And he could throw the ball, but he can't throw it when it's short. He's not very accurate short, so that's going to end up being a problem for them. But they could end up scoring a ton of points here and winning this game. But I'm staying away, but lean towards Clemson.
Yeah, man, it's going to be the superstar freshman Cade Klubnik's first career start. Tennessee going for 11 wins for the first time since 2001, and Clemson going for 12-plus wins for the 6th time in the last 8 seasons. So going to be an exciting game. I'm not going to give you a pick in this one. I don't like to pick in my Vols games. It tends to bite me. In the past, it has anyway. So I want to sit back and watch this one. I'll tell you what I am anxious to see is what Tennessee is going to be looking like going forward. I mean, you got Joe Milton, who should be the starter going into next season. some big time recruits coming in at the quarterback position, but Joe Milton's going to be that guy, super, super talented guy, really athletic guy, has a hand cannon that if he can ever learn how to control that thing, he is going to be a nasty, nasty talent. But let's see how Josh Heupel develops him, get prepared for the bowl game. You're going to have 3-4 weeks to do that. So I'm going to sit back and watch this one. Like I said, really anxious to see what both teams are going to be going forward in the next season. And this is going to be another one. It's going to be a very exciting game, probably back and forth. That Clemson defense probably does give them the edge against the Tennessee offense that's not going to be as experienced as we've seen all year long. But I'm going to sit back, watch this one as a fan, and hope for the best. Go Big Orange, but can't give you a pick here. Just look for exciting things and looking forward into the future in this one. But the next game, the Trans Perfect Music City Bowl, and a game, if you love defense, you better watch this one. The Iowa Hawkeyes will be playing the Kentucky Wildcats in what has been two of the better defenses in the country this year.
Yeah, but didn't they play each other last year in the bowl game too? So the Music City Bowl in Nashville, the both quarterbacks out. Levis has opted out for Kentucky. The bad quarterback for Iowa opted out. I don't care. I don't know if anybody cares really. They continue to lose wide receiver recruits at Iowa, though they did get a very big tight end transfer from Michigan because they do have a history of developing tight ends. Two very defensively dominant teams. Kentucky's good running backs also opted out. So it's that will explain why the total is at 31, one of the lowest totals we've ever seen in all of college football.
Lower than Army and Navy, man.
Exactly. Lower than the academies, which are historically notoriously under games. So, and the public's still betting the under. Almost 2/3 of the tickets coming on the under. They just don't know if either one of these teams can score. Kentucky's favored by 2.5, right under a field goal. 3/4 of the tickets on Iowa. Almost 80% of the money line tickets on Iowa. So people are predicting Iowa in the under, and that Iowa's defense will outperform Kentucky's defense, given that Kentucky lost the only quality quarterback they had and the only quality running back they had. There's a lot of logic to that. I think the X factors, we don't know a lot. We don't know enough about the Kentucky backup quarterback. And I look at this as it really is a pick 'em game, and that's where the spread is. I would be tempted to take the over just on a matter of principle of how low this total is. But when I look at the game, I could easily see it finishing 3-0. So consequently, I'm laying off this one. If you like defense, this game will be a lot of fun. If you like offense, this game would be pure torture.
Correct. This game is going to be a very boring game to watch if you're only into offense. If points on the board are your thing, this is not the game to watch. That Iowa defense was so stout all year long. It's really reliably stout, and the Kentucky defense played extremely well too. If Levis was starting and they had Rodriguez playing, I think I would take Kentucky here, but now I'm just staying away from this game altogether, probably from the TV too, because I am not one to watch boring defensive games.
Yeah, everything in me wants to take the under right here, but I just don't think I can make myself do it with it being that low. I've done pretty well on Iowa unders all year long, but this game, this is a game you could see a couple defensive touchdowns in, and the defensive touchdown is the ultimate enemy for the under better. And so I could see that happening right here. I think I'm going to lean toward Iowa, though. -2.5, anything under a field goal, just simply because all the talent they have on that defense, and with all of Kentucky's big dogs on offense opting out of the game. Don't know what I'm going to get out of that offense. They haven't shown me. Will Levis was hurt a couple games this year. They didn't show me anything when he was out of the game. Chris Rodriguez not playing. That offense runs through him when they get that running game going. And so I don't know what I'm going to get out of that offense. So part of me wants to take the under. I'm probably going to stay away from that, but I like Iowa right here, anything under a field goal. And this is going to be a terrible game to watch, man. Terrible game to watch. So, but moving on, let's get to these New Year's Six bowls now. We've already talked about the Orange Bowl a little bit, but now let's talk about the All-State Sugar Bowl between the Big 12 champion Kansas State Wildcats and the for a disappointing season for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah, Alabama favored by 3. Spreads all the way down to just a field goal. Public still betting slightly on Kansas State, money line and points. Total of 54. 60% of the money coming in on the over, despite Kansas State being a very defensively oriented team during the season. This is all about motivation, and the spread is a reaction to the belief that Alabama won't be motivated because they missed the playoff, and that Alabama had a very high number of players enter the transfer portal. However, if you look at those players that entered the transfer portal, almost none were seeing significant minutes. And so I think it's mostly overstated the significance of it was mostly guys that had disappointed at Alabama that are transferring out, not guys who shined at Alabama who transferred out. Now, this spread definitely reflects the belief that there's no chance Bryce Young will play, that Bryce Young will opt out because he's going to go into the draft, and he wouldn't waste that chance in the Sugar Bowl. I'm not quite as sold on that as others are. I do think there's a major drop-off with Alabama from Bryce Young to the backup. The backup's more of a runner, very unreliable passer. You can go back and watch the A&M game this season for that performance. However, the talent disparity here is massive. Now, Kansas State is the kind of team, both under Snyder and now under Kleeman, who overachieve. They are Big 12 champs for a reason. They overachieve against more talented foes on a regular basis. But that seems to be overpriced into the line here. You're talking about an Alabama team that, from a power rating, talent-based perspective, even with the opt-outs, even if Bryce Young doesn't play, would normally be favored by 30 over Kansas State on a neutral field. So giving them 27 points for opt-outs in Kansas State overachieving is a big, big gap. I favor Alabama by 17 in this game. I also think Nick Saban will have the team motivated to play. This will not be like the Utah game years ago where after they lost, they were really disappointed and they really just didn't show up. The Saban's been saying over and over again he wants to vindicate this team's performance by this performance in the bowl game. Both coordinators are on the hot seat and really need a great game, a well-executed game plan to have any chance to have any job after the game. I think Saban has something to prove to show the playoff committee they were wrong in excluding Alabama. And so the talent disparity alone would get me to the window, but I don't think there'll be as big a motivational gap as people assume. I think Alabama goes in and reminds everybody why they're Alabama. God bless Kansas State, but they're not talent-wise anywhere near Alabama.
Yeah, no, talent. It boils down to that. This Alabama team is one of the top 3 talented teams in the country, and they far exceed any other team in the country at all. Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. I think there is a motivation discrepancy, but I think it favors Alabama. I think these guys are really, really upset that they missed out. I think they want to try to set a precedent for next time this happens. Say, look, this Alabama team that lost to 2 teams last second plays, under 6 points for both games. This team deserved to be there. It was one of the best 4 teams in the country, and when you're one of the best 4 teams in the country, you shouldn't be left out. So they're going in looking to really blow Kansas State out here. I think 3's way too low, and I think they'll get it done and win by more than 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, like you guys said, Alabama's had a tendency in the past to kind of let down in these games when they come off disappointing, not making playoffs, not playing for a national title. That's what they like to do in Tuscaloosa every year since Nick Saban has been there. But Kansas State, there's a question in this game for me. Are they going to run like kind of a 2 QB system? Will Howard has been playing since Adrian Martinez has been hurt for about 5-6 weeks now, but they said he was healthy enough to probably go in the Big 12 game, but they decided to go with Will Howard. They're 4-0. And won the Big 12 as him as a starter. He's threw for a combined 9 TDs and only 1 pick in those games, also rushed for 2 touchdowns. But for me, did they kind of get away from that? Do they try to start doing the 2 QB system and stuff? Because if they fall behind early in this game to Alabama, I don't think they're ever going to be able to recover. And like you guys said, I think Alabama's motivated to finish this season on a high note, going into next season, working for things in the future. And the talent disparity is just far too much in this game. Alabama, I feel like it should be way closer to double digits as far as Alabama and a spread in this game. So anything under a field goal right here, really anything under a touchdown, I'm okay with taking Alabama in this spot. And I look for them to have a big, big time win in this one. And I don't think we're going to see the letdowns that we've seen from Alabama in the past in this game. So moving on to the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. This is not a New Year's Six Bowl, but a kind of a big time matchup, man. You got the LSU Tigers taking on the Purdue Boilermakers. And the Boilermakers going to be without their head coach, Jeff Brom. LSU trying to build for the future also. Look for some exciting things this one. I think it's going to be a weirdly exciting game.
Yeah, it's interesting. The line is huge. LSU favored. I mean, the Citrus Bowl used to be always played on New Year's Day, moved it to the day after New Year's now. LSU favored by 14. And again, I remind everybody, double-digit favorites have been a fade in bowl games going on 2 decades. And despite that big margin, LSU, over 90% of the tickets are on the Bayou Bengals. You have a total of 56.5. So basically, they're predicting a 35-21 kind of game. I get that from a certain perspective. LSU went out and did put up some points with the backup quarterback against Georgia, though Georgia was blowing them out and dominating that game from start to finish for the most part. So how much you put value on that is an open question. Brian Kelly's going to get 3-4 weeks to prepare. Purdue, as you note, without their coach, Jeff Brom, but with a quarterback who's got a lot to prove against an LSU defense that people forgot just gave up 50 points to Georgia. So not quite sold. I mean, now, does LSU have any big? I don't think Purdue has many big opt-outs, but does LSU have any big opt-outs?
The biggest question mark for LSU is going to be whether Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, is going to be able to be healthy. Got to deal with that high ankle sprain stuff that he suffered against A&M and had reoccurring things happen in the SEC title game. So it's really going to boil down to whether he can go and be 100% or not.
Yeah, I would lean towards Purdue just on the double-digit basis, getting 2 touchdowns and being such a publicly disrespected underdog. This is a team that made the Big Ten title game. Not a strong lean because LSU does have a lot of talent, and LSU definitely has a talent edge in this game. But based on LSU being up and down, based on Purdue's quarterback playing for an NFL spot or playing for increasing his NFL draft stock against a team perceived to be good, I think Purdue can hang in there in this game. And interim head coaches of this nature have had a history of overachieving in bowl games when there's a late coaching move. However, the talent disparity and the coaching uncertainty at Purdue will likely lead me to be off the game. But if I had to take a lean, it'd be Purdue catching 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's too many points for me. I mean, there is a talent discrepancy, but Purdue's not too far behind there. I see this game as more like 7, but even at 10, I might stay away. But 14.5 is just too many. I like Purdue here catching all those points.
Yeah, I never like to give up this many points in any bowl game. Both the teams are very capable and deserving of being there. I think this game is much more important for LSU. I think if you'd have told any of the LSU fans after that season opening loss to Florida State on that extra point block that they were going to get 9 wins, beat Alabama, and go to the SEC title game, I think they would have been okay with that. But Brian Kelly, has made some strides in his first season. I think it's a big-time game for them moving forward and what they're going to be able to establish going into next season. Like I said, the key is Jaden Daniels, whether he can play and be 100% healthy or not. But 14 points is far too many points right here. So I'm probably going to stay away from this one altogether, sit back, kind of watch it, see what I'm going to get out of these teams. I like what Purdue has done down the stretch here. I think the defense is very capable in spots. So if I'm leaning anywhere toward the total, I might look at the under and expect big things out of these defenses and maybe an unsure offense from Purdue, like I said, losing the head coach and things of that nature. But 14 points is far too many points right here. So I'm just going to stay away from this one altogether and enjoy it and see what I'm getting out of these teams moving forward. Back to the New Year's 6 bowls, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. The USC Trojans take on the Tulane Green Wave, and 2 teams that are going to be very, very differently motivated in this game.
Yeah, and apparently the assumption is that Caleb Williams is going to opt out for the game, that Jordan Addison is going to opt out for the game, that other key players for USC are going to opt out for the game because the spread is crazy. I mean, it's a USC team that made the Pac-12 title game, playing against the group of 6 contender for the big bowls, Tulane, and USC is only favored by a point or a point and a half. The public, despite that, is betting Tulane, probably based on the assumptions of those big opt-outs for USC. Total at 61.5, so they're basically predicting 31-30 for USC. 70% of the money line tickets are betting on the Trojans. Talent-wise, I would strongly lean towards USC, but might wait to see who exactly is going to play for USC in this game before taking the bet. Because assuming Caleb Williams is out, this game may move to a pick'em. And the spread sort of already assumes it. Now, if you think Caleb Williams will play or there's a high chance of it, you might as well get the line now because that line will spike if Caleb Williams announces he's actually going to play. But the talent disparity between these two is absolutely massive. From a power rating, talent-driven perspective, USC should be favored by 30. So this is a lot of respect for an overachieving Tulane team against the USC team that was 1 game away from a playoff.
Yeah, Tulane's recruiting pool is a sort of USC's second and mostly third string players. So even without these players starting, there's still a talent disparity in favor of USC. So I'm going to take USC at -2. I'm going to wait and see who's playing because if Caleb Williams is not playing and that goes lower, or God forbid Tulane becomes favored, I'm really going to hop on it with some money there. But again, It to me, it doesn't really matter. I'll probably go ahead and put some on it right now to start with because it doesn't matter to me if he doesn't play. I still think USC is the more talented team there.
Yeah, this is by far the most startling line of any of the 43 bowl games. I really, when I saw this one, it kind of blew my mind there because there's no reason USC should be favored, I feel like, by anything less than 10 points in this game. I know you got the opt-out stuff and everything, but the talent disparity alone should be able to make up for that. So I don't know. It just kind of looks funny to me. It wouldn't be one that blows my mind if Tulane found a way to win it. These group of 5 teams in, non-playoff games, they only had one team make the playoff, but in these games, these New Year's Six bowls, they're usually very, very competitive and have a lot more to play for usually than the team they're playing against. It's usually a game where the group of 5 school catches the team that just missed the playoff or something like that. So those teams aren't very motivated going into the bowl season. But Tulane wants to end up what's been a storybook year, man. They're 11-2. I mean, just like, I think 2 years removed after going 2-10 or something like that. So a complete turnaround for this Green Wave squad. But I got to avoid this one, man. That line is just way too fishy for me. I don't understand why it's that low. And usually in my experience in the past, when a line is this sketchy like this, it usually winds up turning out bad for me. So I'm going to avoid this one altogether and just sit back and see what I'm going to get out of USC moving forward because, I mean, there's a lot of questions. Caleb Williams may opt out for this game, but he will be coming back and playing next year. He's already said he has unfinished business out there, so they're going to be a big squad to look at going into next season. So I think they probably want to get this one on a high note and get a big win to end the season going into the offseason, but that line's just too fishy for me, so I got to avoid this one altogether. And moving on to the Rose Bowl game, the Utah Utes, the Pac-12, back-to-back Pac-12 champions, will get to play one of the biggest winners of the College Football Playoff Committee, the Penn State Nittany Lions. When Ohio State squeaked in, Penn State now will represent the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl game.
It's fascinating. I mean, all these games used to be on New Year's Day. Now they moved to the day after New Year's Day, and the ones that are not part of the College Football Playoff. Utah favored by 2.5. In their back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances, took Ohio State to the limit last year. Public is leaning towards a Utah based on that win over USC in the Pac-12 title game. Total of 52, so basically they're predicting 27-25. That projected score, would make sense if this was a different Utah team. This is a Utah team that's actually quite good offensively, but quite poor defensively through most of the season. I get USC laid an egg for 3 quarters after they got that big lead. But if you look at Utah over the course of the season, this was a bad defense. This was nothing like a traditional Utah defense. And this Penn State team now has, 3 weeks to prepare. James Franklin has had some fun Rose Bowl games in the past. And you give this Penn State team that time to prepare. They have a couple of opt-outs on defense, including the great cornerback, Joey Porter. But Utah's not exactly an explosive downfield passing game and has their own big opt-outs for the game at key positions. So I see this as the wrong team as favored. Penn State has more talent, and I think Penn State has as much motivation for sure as Utah. This is the Rose Bowl. This is a great achievement for them. Utah, it's great to be there, but again, this is the second time back-to-back seasons being there. So it's not like it's some once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience. And I think people have not caught on to Utah's defense not being that great. I lean the over and lean Penn State.
Yeah, I think that rushing game in Penn State's going to be too much for Utah. I agree. I think it should be reversed here. I think Penn State should be favored by about 3. So I like Penn State at plus 2.5 points.
Yeah, this Penn State team is one of the most intriguing teams to me going into next season. They have a lot of guys coming back. They are going to lose all-world cornerback Joey Porter Jr., who's going to go on to the NFL draft, will not be playing in the Rose Bowl game. But outside of that, man, their left tackle, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was one of the top 10, top tackle prospect in the draft by Todd McShay and Mel Kiper and those guys. Expect him to go to the top 10 pick, but he has decided to come back to Penn State for another year. And they have a lot of guys coming back. I mean, they're building for the future. They feel like they have unfinished business. This team's kind of always quietly winning 10 games, man. Left out of the conversation when you got Michigan and Ohio State in the same division as you. But this Penn State team going forward, man, I expect big things out of them going into next season. I think they're going to end this season with an exclamation point and a big win over Utah. Like you said, I think the spread is wrong. I think it should be going the other way with Penn State, maybe minus 2.5 or 3. So I'm going to take Penn State in the points right here and look for a big win out of these guys moving into next season. And they're going to be one of my more exciting teams to watch going into the next season. So, but that's what we got for you guys today, man. We're going to actually talk about it. We'll do a college football playoff preview for you guys when it gets a little closer. We're still about 2.5, 3 weeks out of that. But this is what we got for you this time. Robert, appreciate you being with us, man.
And as always, thanks everybody. Remember everybody here on Sports Wars to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want additional handicapping content, including recommended picks that have made money for 2 seasons in a row, 2 years in a row, ever since it started, over a 50% rate of return, you can go to sportspicks.locals.com where for now you can still purchase all of the picks for $10 a month or $100 a year, and you get over 1,000 picks over the year on college football, the NFL, college basketball, the NBA, World Cup, you name it. So we'll be continuing to do that. So go over to sportspicks.locals.com. You can join for free if you want to, and get a lot of interesting and valuable free content.
And Cody, man, as always, a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Glad to be here. If either of y'all are doing anything on the first, besides watching NFL football, please just let me know, because I'm doing nothing now besides watching NFL football, as there are no New Year's Day bowl games this year.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the NFL. NFL is king. So New Year's Day falls on January 1st, man. They're not going to let the college games run the same day as that. So that's probably why we're getting that this year. But enjoyed it with you guys. As always, you guys stay safe out there. Good luck to you as the bowl season starts tomorrow. First game kicking off at 11:30. We'll be back with you guys real soon with some more info and insight. Take care, guys. Have a good one.
Happy gambling.